Hello. So the night has drawn in. It's just finished the 9 p.m. turn at the combined Hexasim game with Quatre Bras and Ligny. Very enjoyable experience overall, and the final result was actually a coalition victory. Was it decisive, or was it just a? You get a little sort of cross-reference chart in the rule book where you align the result on the Quatre Bras map with the result on the Ligny map, and where those two results cross gives you the overall conclusion for the combined game. So we had a coalition victory at Quatre Bras, and that intersects with the Prussian victory at Ligny, which means it's a decisive coalition victory. I've never seen that sort of result before at Ligny. There may be one or two contributory factors to that, which we'll discuss. The result actually at Quatre Bras was pretty close. The final VP score was actually 67.5, and again the break point is 100 for that. And although that sounds quite a big difference, had they have not introduced Kellerman's Cavalry, which was 30 points worth, that would have put them up to 97.5, which is essentially one more Allied unit dead, and that would have tipped them over the 100 point. And you could argue, what did the additional Kellerman units achieve? Was it sort of 30 points worth? I suspect not. So a little bit closer there than the final tally would suggest. I think Quatre Bras is just a bit tough for Ney with the single corps. Had Delon had turned up, I think they could have really pushed on, and you can get some additional victory points for getting close to Quatre Bras, or being actually, if you can position, I think it's more than 40 strength points on the road between Quatre Bras and Thiel. So there are ways to get quite a few more VPs, but you need to push on a bit north of the current position that Ney got to. What happened with Delon was that Delon, if you recall, did actually enter on the Ligny map, and so much so that Calert, who was the Dutch cavalry, I mean, there was a variable reinforcement called by the Allies at Quatre Bras, and if successful, Merlin, who was the original officer in command of the formation, he steps down, and Calert takes over with the additional 4 or 5 units, and they actually transferred onto the Ligny battlefield to try and intercept Delon's corps, just to hold them up a little bit, because the concern was they would break through to the Wavre supply point on the road, as the road leaves the map. As it was, Delon can't really get there. I think it's probably mathematically possible, but he's got to come on pretty much the first opportunity, which is the end of the 3 p.m. turn, using this house rule. They've then got to roll probably above average to get them to their initial target, and then you'd either need to retain the change of plans card and have that in your back pocket as the French player, or to have a successful die roll to allow a change of orders to take place once they reach their initial destination. So they captured the flag at Haut-Barrette, but apart from the Haut-Barrette points, which is worth 10, their appearance cost the French 80. And although it's historically probably more accurate, it's a bit of a stretch to see what they can really achieve if they enter the map on the sort of Ligny side rather than supporting their Quatre Bras. I feel there should be some sense of excitement and danger if D'Erlon turns up, and yes, it is D'Erlon, because if memory serves, the Guard were about to deliver the final attack at Ligny when the Prussians were in a bit of a state. I think Blucher had even been unhorsed at that point, and they had to delay the final attack whilst trying to confirm the nature of this column that was advancing towards their rear, and that delay and the additional time gave rise to the failing light and the ability for Blucher to be sort of spirited away by his entourage. And of course it was him rather than Gneisenau who said that he would support Wellington at Waterloo. Had Gneisenau taken over because Blucher had been captured or worse, then I suspect that Gneisenau would have retreated in a more easterly direction and wouldn't have been there on the 18th. So it was that critical moment in the battle where the Guard had just paused. I think that they lost about an hour of time, but that was enough to make good Blucher's survival and escape to fight another day. And by the time they realised, of course, that they were French. It was a French column, which then promptly disappeared, going back over towards Ney side of the battle again. So I don't know whether I need to think about it a bit more. Although I like the house rule for the historical feel, I still think that the French should feel some sense of anticipation and excitement, and the Prussians similarly a sense of sort of foreboding. This doesn't look good, because they really can't do much when coming on the map at that position, which is, I guess, why the designer changed the entry from that position to the Flores entry position. Because just to go to the Ligny battlefield, the Prussian losses were pretty high, 211. You add up all the infantry strength point losses, combine the cavalry and the artillery, which you then double, and that gives you your total. So there were 211 Prussian losses compared to only 79 of the French, which sounds pretty good on the face of it, but the Prussians get the points for the flags, and because they managed to keep the majority of the flags throughout the game, they were picking up sort of 50 points, 60 points in the early turns. So they got something like 380 points for flag possession, countered by 260 that the French picked up for flags, and for Blucher failing in his impetuosity trait. So I think on 3 turns he failed to make his required attack, which earned the French 50 points each time. But they still came out of that 120 points to the good. So I think the final scores there were 4-7-1 for the French and 5-9-9 for the Prussians. And 140 of that 5-9-9 were the arrival of Le Bau, Mouton's 6th Corps, which actually got to Ligny, but we had a pretty short turn. You get like a sort of ground rush for the last turn or two as the die rolls required to end the game to reduce. So you need to really focus on them to get them into the battle. So I think they cost, I think it was 40 points. Is it 40 points? Can't remember now. And the Durland's first corps were 80 points and didn't really sort of bring much to the table. So had they have had no variables arrive, that would have knocked them down 140, which would have converted it from a Prussian victory to a draw, which would have adjusted the overall result to a coalition victory as opposed to a decisive victory. But, you know, such is war. I think I might be tempted to try the entry point as written in campaign game 2 for Durland next time, just to compare the different solutions. I don't know if there's a way to try and represent the hesitancy which was introduced to the French command whilst they were trying to discern the exact nature of this approaching column. I wanted to think about that for a bit. But a really fun game. I mean, it's plays really well. Plays fine solitaire because I think the order system makes a lot of the decisions for you. You can't think too long and hard about what you're going to do with your guys when you activate them, because you know that, you know, that's my order. So if I'm going to move, I'm going to move in that direction primarily. So very enjoyable. I mean, there is a further campaign game which has an even sort of looser structure, which starts in the morning of the 16th. That's the grand campaign game, and in that you're given even more leeway. As the French, you can decide to make Quatre Bras the main push, and you might decide to send Napoleon up the Quatre Bras route towards Brussels. I think the Guard must stick with Napoleon, but apart from that you get a much freer options to which corps goes where, and that's also got all the variables which you can choose to have enter or not. So a great game. I'm not sure what to do next. I think tempted to have a go at Austerlitz, but maybe a change of period. Maybe go ancient or modern or something. But it's good stuff. I'll have a quick tour of the battlefield so you can see the final positions, and thanks for watching. Okay, so at Quatre Bras you can see that the French managed to hold on to Gimignoncourt. That's Cook's Guard division was starting to apply pressure to the French left, and a couple of the guys are routed away. But that's a fairly stable position now. I say there's Kellerman there, who not sure we got the full 30 points worth out of them. But a fairly battered Anglo-Allied order of battle. Brunswick secured this location here, the farm at Pyramont. That's worth 10 points. So they sort of secured that, and of course the other function of Brunswick's troops was to deny the French access to that road between Quatre Bras and Thiel, which I think is about 40 points if they can get on there. I think they need to do that early as the French. So it doesn't matter which turn that you do it, as long as you've done it once. you can actually build up those points during the turns rather than at the end of the game. So this is Collert's Dutch cavalry. So Collert basically came scampering across from Quatre Bras once reports of this French column, which was D'Erlon, coming up from the Ancillon, Usine de Chazart. He had orders to move to Autun-Barrette, and that's the flag. That's the flag position which they did secure, so that was worth 10 points, but of course they only got that on the last turn, so that only counted once, because flags count every turn. And in fact the French were able to send some cavalry off just to screen Collert's efforts to intercept the road, and that's as close as they got to that had both their activations. There is a last push card which could have given D'Erlon's corps another activation, but it would have meant this unit here, this cavalry unit, doing independent movement, which would be halved to 4 plus 2 on the main roads. They still would not have got to the star, so it would need some pretty speedy manoeuvres, I think, for them to get there. And I mean, that's worth 50, but even the 50 and the 10 is not enough to pay for the entry of D'Erlon. So I don't know. I think the sort of jury's still out as to the best way to sort of represent that in the battle. Down here we see that Van Damme was pushing. In fact, he was kind of pushing against an open door, really, because the Prussians had decided that they were taking too many losses, as was borne out actually in the final body count. So the remnants of First Corps, along with Second Corps, were starting to move up to the Moulin du Bussy, which is that's the windmill just there, and I think the orders were actually to come up to this hex here. So they both got a change of orders. I think we threw a 5 on one turn, which you subtract 3, and that's the number of formations that you can adjust the orders for, which was quite nice. So both corps were able to move in tandem and still present a fairly good line. So Mouton, aka Le Bao, didn't really justify his appearance. Didn't get, although he was able to take the place of Girard's corps, who have decided that they've had enough for the day and are heading south. They never really got to Ligny to add their weight. So consequently the 2 flags in Ligny, I'm convinced that I could have played that better as the French. Yeah, bit of a poor effort. Note to self to do better next time. Milhaud's heavy cavalry destroyed 1 regiment of Prussians, so they'd taken the threat away from that part of the battlefield, but the Prussians, I think, looking at the clock, realised that there was no need to keep taking risks in that area, and Pujol has been picnicking pretty much for most of the afternoon, just very conscious about activations, and actually the rest of Tillman's corps were using independent movement and were able to do enough of a screen to have really impeded Pujol getting to the Namur Road victory point location, which is where the star is. But great game. If you get a chance to try it, certainly I'd recommend it. If you've got the space to do them together, I mean that's the absolute sort of pinnacle, I think, of the system. But either game is also good on their own. So thanks for watching.